Nsima, thank you for taking the time to come on today and have this chat. And I typically ask people to briefly introduce themselves at the beginning of the episode, just so anyone that's listening can familiarize themselves with what you do, what you're involved in. But I do include all your links and all your information in the description of the episode. So if anyone's listening or watching and wants to delve deeper into what Nsima is all about, feel free to have a look at that. But just to kick things off, do you mind just introducing yourself briefly?
Yeah, so I'm an athlete and a coach. I'm a pro natural bodybuilder. I'm an elite level powerlifter, and I focus on and I do Jiu Jitsu now. I'm a purple belt in Jiu Jitsu, and I compete there. I also co-host along with Mark Bell and Andrew Zaragoza here on the Mark Bell's Power Project. I have a very inconsistent podcast called We Don't Know Yet. So, yeah.
Very cool. So when did you start that podcast?
We Don't Know Yet?
Okay.
Or Mark Bell's Power Project. Oh,
you said we started your own podcast, is that what you said?
Oh yeah, we've been doing that for that's been like a year and some change. So maybe a year and 3 or 4 months. But like the other co-host of that podcast, we've been best friends since we were 6 years old, and we kind of have the same or very similar outlooks on life. So we keep each other like moving in terms of our own development. Like we're in on that, but we're very inconsistent because like he works in the Bay, I work here. So whenever we get a chance to get together, we'll pop out an episode. Yeah.
That's cool. And what do you typically talk about? What do you cover?
Like self-development, growth in terms of like men, because like what I think is I'm really lucky in a sense that first off, we've known each other since we were really young, and we've grown into the men who we are, because that means that we can talk about things that I guess men don't typically talk about with each other, or men aren't comfortable about talking about with each other, whether it be as far as relationships, as far as growth, just like personal things. I have him, and then there's another friend of ours that we kind of talk about these things with. So, yeah, I think I've just been really lucky to have a friend that like at that level, because I don't think a lot of men really do have that. Like they may have friends, but like those friends, they can't really, they can't talk about their actual problems with, because of how it's typically looked at to talk about, some of your issues as a dude, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dudes are kind of funny that way. It's like, hey man, I'm really feeling upset. I got this issue. Another dude is just like, all right, I don't know what to do with that, man. So you're gonna solve that for yourself, right? Like I got the same thing with I've basically known a bunch of my buddies for many years since high school, and even still we don't really like communicate much in that sense. Like my wife, she kind of makes fun of us because she always asks me to ask them questions that I just can't be bothered to even, like, I don't care, like I care and I care about them, but I know they'll sort it out. So we don't really get into all the nitty gritty stuff. So that's good that you have that relationship with your buddy.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing Mark Bell's Powercast, or the Power Project?
Yeah, so Mark Bell's Power Project has been since, I believe, February, March, July, August, so 6 months. So yeah, no, 7 months now. 7 months now. So it's been great, man. It's been making me continue to like evolve, because we have a lot of awesome guests on, and like with those guests comes a lot of new information. Some things that I may be digging in on, some things that I really don't know much about, and it allows me to kind of get that firsthand information, kind of sift through it, figure out what I can dig in on, because when I look at information, I like to understand the big concepts or the big important things. There's a lot of great information in what's shared here, but there's a lot of things that really doesn't matter. A lot of things that isn't necessarily something that can be applied to myself or applied to people I work with, or just most people don't really care about. So it kind of allows me to get that bullet information, dig in on it, and learn more. Because I think that's one of the big things that I really like to do. I really like to just continue figuring out new things that can help optimize, optimize us as people, workers, just everything. That's what I like to do. And that's one thing that the podcast has helped me to do too, because like, I feel like a little bit before this, I was like that, but I was also stagnating. I was getting a little bit comfortable in terms of what I already knew. I wasn't going at, I guess, learning new things with the vigor that I had before. But doing this and seeing all the amazing people that come on and learning from them has kind of brought that back at a higher level. And I'm really excited about that.
Very cool. You kind of answered my question there was what your biggest takeaway is. So I guess you just continue to expand and learn and grow and then find new things you're interested in through the guests that come on. So what's been your favorite guest so far that's been on the podcast?
That's actually it's a toughie. The guest we just had on, his name's Charlie. Well, he goes by Charlie Rocket. I guess I'm going to do maybe top 2 off the top of my head, but I know there's someone who's going to be above this list. Stan Efferding's really dope, but I think people really already know who Stan is. But Charlie, he goes, his name's Charlie Jabley, but he goes by Charlie Rocket now. And before he used to be known as CEO Charlie. He was a guy that was like a music mogul dude. He was a 2 Chainz manager. And in his past, he was really overweight and he wasn't really happy with what he was doing in his life. Even though he was making millions of dollars, he was managing really popular artists and he had, I guess, a life. He even won a Grammy. He had a life that everybody thought, everybody thought would be great on the outside, but he wasn't enjoying his life because apparently since he was a child, he always wanted to be an athlete, but he was quickly shifted out of that because he was a bigger kid and nobody really saw that in him. And it just wasn't something that people thought were feasible. It wasn't reasonable or realistic. So after he had all this success, he just kind of transformed himself. And what was really interesting about him is, you hear a lot about the law of attraction from people. And at this point in this day and age, in terms of self-development, when a lot of people hear that idea of the law of attraction, immediately your BS alarm goes off. People start to think it's bullshit. It's not real. That's just some Oprah Winfrey, BS type of stuff. And I don't think it's that way. I think it's very real. But the interesting things that he did was he had something he called a quantum notebook, and he would put very specific things that he wanted to do in there. He wanted to be a Nike athlete. And this is a 200 and maybe 70-pound guy, or he was 5'8" at the time. He was overweight. But he wants to be a Nike athlete. And he put that in there. And then he said, okay, I need to make a mini commercial. I need someone who does all these 5 things. And he moved to LA. So he was like, I don't know how I'm going to find someone that does that. But he wrote it down. And then literally the next day, someone walks into the apartment where he's roommates with. And that is the person that helped him, had all those qualifications to help him make that type of commercial. And then it's all these other things, that he wanted to happen, that he wrote down, that he put in there, that he was really going for. All these crazy things happened. He ended up becoming a Nike sponsored athlete. He ended up doing a commercial with Serena Williams and LeBron James. And easily someone could listen to that and be like, oh, he's definitely lying. But at the same time, I've heard that from so many other people that hearing that again and be able to talk to him about that just kind of, I guess it cemented that a little bit for me, in terms of that is very possible, to put those things out there, to work. You got to work towards them. You can't just put something out and feel like magically it's going to come to me. But, it'll activate something. It'll put it out there for you and you'll be able to get there. So I really liked that whole episode. I don't want to tell Charlie's whole story. I think that people should just go follow him and check that episode out because he's an awesome dude. But that was great. And then the next episode that I think I really enjoyed was, it was more of I guess more of a sciencey episode, but it was with what's his name? He wrote The Oxygen Advantage. I feel so bad for not remembering his name, but no, I don't remember. So the book is The Oxygen Advantage. Okay, if you type that in, you'll come across his name. We did an episode with him, and it was just a really cool episode. We delved in on sleep and breathing, and a lot of things that I think athletes, whether they be lifters, whether they be individuals that do martial arts and have a lot of breathing focus, I think a lot of athletes will get a lot from that episode in terms of optimizing their sleep, optimizing their breathing, because that can play a big role, a massive, massive, massive role in terms of your athletic performance. I think it's just one of those things that we focus on our nutrition, we focus on our training volume and all of these things, but a few things that we kind of leave out of the way are little habits of getting optimal sleep, breathing well. Even we didn't talk about this, but even getting enough light exposure, which is huge. But that episode is really dope. So there's so many, and I feel like there's one that is going to creep in that I'm like, oh shit, that was great too. But that's what's off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, yeah. No, it sounds great. And I get what you're saying with the law of attraction stuff. And I find a lot of people get caught up with creating a vision board of some sort, whatever it is they do, and they just stare at it on a wall. And like maybe they're just thinking, I'm gonna do it. The Ferrari's coming, you know, but it's just it's not happening, right? So it's like you need to set your intention just that way, write it down, whatever it is you may do, you may create a song if you got to, I don't know, whatever your creative expression is, but then work towards that every single day, right? Think about it, but then actually take the necessary steps, you know, and make that come to fruition. So I assume that's what he did, but if he didn't, then that's some crazy fucking thing. Like someone just walked through the door like, hey, you want to be a Nike thing, right? Like I'm going to sign you up.
No,
That's really cool.
that's the thing. You know, he was taking small actions and actions towards these things, but those actions he was taking led to the exact thing that he wanted to happen. You know what I mean? So it's not like he was just sitting around and thinking and yeah, it came,
Yeah,
but exactly like you were saying, action was being taken, you know?
Much like even with your jujitsu, you know, like when did you actually start jujitsu? It was recently, right? Like 2 years ago?
It's actually December 3 years ago. So it's about to be year 4 now, 2019.
Okay.
So December of 2015 is when I started.
Okay.
Yeah, December of 2015. So it's been about 4 years now, about 4 years.
And you started with that by like just putting it in your mind, something you want to do, right? And you have a goal that you want to attain. I assume it's, you know, just achieving a higher level black belt at some point and working towards that. So, I mean, you could say in some way, that's law of attraction right there. And the reason why I remember roughly when you started jiu-jitsu is actually, I think I saw back then that you mentioned you were going to get into it, and I was considering getting into it as well. I have a taekwondo background. I did that for a little over 9 years.
Ooh.
And I was a little fearful to get into jiu-jitsu because of the joints and all that stuff, because I do practice powerlifting as well. I'm sure not as competitively as you, and I certainly don't lift as much as you, but I was just wondering, how did you get around that? Did you encounter any injuries or anything like that when you got into jiu-jitsu, or do you have to work your powerlifting around it? Like, how do you structure everything to make it work?
Okay. So yeah, when I started, it was the idea of a friend because like I played soccer for like 15 years. So now 14 years, 6 to like 20. And I moved my body a lot. So doing only lifting and powerlifting, that kind of, for me, like I wasn't able to move the way I wanted to move. I was getting really stiff, you know, like you did taekwondo and you do powerlifting now, but you probably have all your flexibility and stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Like I can jump, kick, fly through
yeah,
the air, do all that shit. Yeah.
I see that on your IG, right? You can move well. But when I was at the peak of my strength in powerlifting, I was not moving well. Maybe I'd move better than the average powerlifter because I did have that soccer background, but I wasn't moving the way I'd like to move. It was very stiff. I was slow. I was not happy. So like when I started jiu-jitsu, I started that because I saw the way they moved. It was very graceful. It was very like, especially at the top level, when you see those top level guys roll, it was flowy. It was just like, I wanted to be able to move that way. So when I started, that was like the goal. Now you asked about injuries. I did, and I think this partially happened outside of the mat, but I had a meniscus injury. So I injured something in here in my knee, and then it got amplified when I rolled one day. And then my meniscus tore outside. Like, I forgot what I was doing, but I got up from a chair and I heard a in my right knee.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, my meniscus tore. It started though in here with something I did when squatting, and I just like being stupid, I didn't stop. Like I just, one other thing I'm kind of mad about in terms of that is because like I knew something happened. This is like totally out to the side, and we're going to veer back real soon.
I think I've done this too, but continue. Yeah, I've had this same issue. But
yeah. So I knew what happened, right? But I went to the hospital and I wanted to get an MRI, right? And the doctor looked at me, my knee. He's like, I think you're okay, buddy. I'm like, man, this isn't normal. I really think you should give me an MRI so I can see what's going on in there. He was like, nah, you're good. You're good. I went back twice. Okay. I went like, I got 2 appointments. He's like, nah, you're good. Cause MRIs are expensive. Even with insurance, MRIs are expensive. Doctors really don't want to give that to you. So then it tore. The happened. And then I went back. I'm like, okay, can I get an MRI now? He's like, oh yeah, let's get an MRI in that, buddy. So it was a bucket handle tear that I had to get surgery on. And the only reason I'm pissed is because maybe we could have done something beforehand. But a meniscus tear isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. It sucks, but it's not that bad. The surgery, they just went in, they pulled out part of the floating meniscus in the handle or whatever. And then I recovered and I was back to training pretty soon after that and jujitsu. I was back to jujitsu about, I think, 9 weeks later, back to lifting. I tried to lift immediately and what I could do off of my leg, and then it recovered. Another small injury I got in jujitsu was like my AC joint. And actually, we'll talk about how I balance everything in a second. But, for anybody that wants to do jujitsu and lifting, or that is maybe currently doing jujitsu and doesn't lift, you should definitely lift. Because what happened with my shoulder was there's a period of time that I thought, okay, let me lower my shoulder volume a little bit, or my pushing volume, because it's kind of getting a little bit tough to deal with. So I kind of just stopped doing a lot of shoulder volume in general. Literally a few weeks later, on the mats, sometimes when you're in the gi, which is the robe that you wear when you do martial arts or jiu-jitsu in the gi, like a lot of times, like when an individual would pull on my arm, right, I started getting something called a subluxation. It's right before a dislocation. So a dislocation is like the head of the shoulder totally coming out of the joint. Subluxation is it's slipping around in the joint. It's very painful. In like 1 week, I had like 5 different subluxations. I was like, why the fuck is this going on? And I thought about it. I'm like, I dropped my shoulder volume a few months ago. There's probably now weakness in the joint. And because the weakness in the joint, the shit's fluing and just moving around. So I immediately just started doing like those banded internal external rotations, along with bringing back a lot of overhead pressing volume in odd positions, like lateral raises, etc. I brought that back. Haven't had a subluxation since, and my AC joint issue is pretty much almost done with. So that kind of just showed me that like it is really beneficial to keep some type of weight training stimulus in, ideally having it be structured and progressive, to help you on the mats, to help strengthen everything you do on the mats. Because I mean, as you know, with your Taekwondo background, you're putting yourself in a lot of, I guess, just weird positions that your body may not be used to, especially in jiu-jitsu too, with all the different holds and all the different submissions. You're getting put into some weird positions. And if you don't have, I guess, muscular and even joint strength and integrity, it's much easier to get injured. Much, much easier to get injured. Most of the guys that I know that get injured a lot in jiu-jitsu don't really do a lot of training outside of jiu-jitsu in terms of the weight room. A lot of the sturdier individuals I know in jiu-jitsu that I roll with or that I know, they don't get injured often. And if it is an injury, it's typically not it's not anything because of it's not anything directly, it's not anything that was unavoidable. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Now the structure part. The big thing, I've talked about this before, if you're starting from a lifting background, you want to get into jiu-jitsu, I was really scared that I would lose strength in the gym or that I would lose a lot of size. And depending on how much you do the martial art or how serious you are about it, if you're trying to train 5 or 6 times a week, right, you have to kind of figure out what your priority is. Are you doing jiu-jitsu as just a weekend warrior type? You just want to get into it. You just want to learn about it and maybe doing it 1 to 2 times a week. Okay, you probably won't lose that much strength in the gym. But if you're getting a lot of cardiovascular stimulus that you haven't gotten before, your lifts are going to take a little bit of a hit because there's the amount of time that you need to adapt to the martial art. You need to be able to adapt to the new stress that's happening, and that takes a while because jiu-jitsu is very cardio intensive. And like we were talking about the breathing thing, one thing that happens with the majority of people that start jiu-jitsu is they forget to breathe. If a man or a woman is on top of you, getting ready to choke you out, your initial response isn't going to be to calm down and breathe and just relax. Your initial response is to hold your breath and use as much force as you can, not using technique to get this person off of you. So that in and of itself causes a lot of unnecessary stress and fatigue, and which is one of the reasons why when a lot of beginners come out of jiu-jitsu in year 1, year 2, even sometimes in year 3, if they haven't grasped this concept, they will feel like they just got in a car wreck. Because if you're holding your breath for so long in between rolls, and most people, honestly, my man, don't realize that they're holding their breath, you can't recover well. It's impossible to recover well. So one of the biggest things is learning how to calm down in the martial arts, first off, to allow yourself to get better. And then over time, you adapt to that stress, and that stress doesn't necessarily hit the weight room nearly as much as it used to. And then over time, you'll be able to start progressing again. So there's a phase of just like, there is going to be a phase where your lifts are going to take a massive hit. But when you adapt, no matter how long it takes, your lifts will start to come back and you could be just as strong or even stronger than you were before.
And is there carryover from your lifting to jiu-jitsu? Because you mentioned, and I can completely envision it, someone on top of you on your chest and you need to breathe. It is triggering that fight or flight response, right? And so does the lifting carry over? Because it's very similar if you're under a squat bar and, you know, you're obviously, you don't want to bail. So you're thinking, okay, I need to get up. And breathing is a huge, bracing the core, as you're all familiar, and some people may not be familiar, but is there carryover from the weightlifting aspect and that fight or flight response reactiveness to the jiu-jitsu training?
So if I'm looking through this at the lens of a power lifter, you know, a lot of times maybe they, you know, you got to brace, you got to hold your breath. You're not going to be breathing as you're going through your deadlift. You know, you're tight, right? There's a carryover in terms of like strength and beneficial strength, but there's also a duality in that in terms of when you're a very strong strength athlete, you almost want to, you're trying to focus on using that in jiu-jitsu. And if you actually do want to get better in jiu-jitsu, you can't just focus on using your strength. Just like if a strength athlete, man, like, you know, if a really strong guy wants to get started in Taekwondo and all of his kicks, he was just trying to be as strong as possible and not using the technique and utilizing his hips, he's not going to really get that good if he's only relying on that. There's so much power that could be created if he had technique like yourself, along with the strength that you have, right? So it's just like in jiu-jitsu. In a lot of situations in the beginning, maybe I could get out of bad situations by tensing up and using all of my strength and just pushing my opponent off or just dragging them, right? But that's not a long-term, like, that's not something that'll benefit me in the long run. And by the way, I just want to make this clear. When I started jiu-jitsu, I was really, really bad. I had no grappling background. I have this story, and the video is up on my YouTube channel. I wish I remembered the title, but there's a counter next to the amount of times that this black belt tapped me. His name was Nate. Maybe it was about 3 months or 4 months.
You rolled up with the black belt first thing too. I guess that's safer for you, right? He's not gonna fuck you up.
Oh, dude. Okay. One thing for anybody that wants to start in jiu-jitsu, if you do go to a school, right, and most schools, or a lot of schools don't allow this, but some schools do, where they allow white belts to roll with other white belts, be very wary. Be very wary, because some white belts are cool and calm, and if they've been doing it for a while, they could be pretty proficient. But a lot of times when white belts sniff out another white belt, they smell blood, and they're very spazzy sometimes. So sometimes, especially if you're a white belt, you don't necessarily know what is good and what is bad. You don't know necessarily when you should stop or when you should even try and get out of, when you should tap to a submission. Sometimes they don't know. And white belts usually hurt other white belts. So that's why I never rolled with a white belt as white belt. And my school, Cassio, who's the instructor, he didn't allow that for good reason. That's a bad idea. So I rolled with like blue belts to black belts. But yeah, in the video, I was rolling with Nate, who was soaking wet, maybe 155 pounds, you know, as a black belt. And I was like 260, 265, right? So I was like, maybe I'll be able to do a little bit of something here. I won't tap him, but maybe I'll be able to defend myself. And no, I didn't defend myself. He tapped me like 6 times in a 6-minute round. So, and that video is there. I had a counter. I had all the submissions that he just wrecked me with. It's all there, right? So like, that's the thing though, you know, look at that weight difference. I was 110 pounds heavier than him. I didn't have that much technique to myself. Maybe I had a little bit in terms of escaping, but that didn't help me. But this black belt with technique, who was way lighter than me, I was way stronger than him. My strength didn't matter. His technique wrecked everything that I tried to do. I couldn't defend myself. I couldn't do anything. That was one of the big like times in my like jiu-jitsu career that I realized, oh, this is good shit. This is awesome. If I can learn to do the things that he does, right? And even like with my strength background, if I can learn how to have that type of technique, I can do this. You know, that's what really drew me to it, the difficulty of it. So you did ask a question before. What was it?
I don't know if it was when I was asking if there's a carryover, mostly in the mental state when you're in that fight or flight. Like if you're able to maintain your cool, maintain your calm, rely on your training, what you've learned, very similar to powerlifting in that sense.
Yeah. So, okay. So that, yeah, dude, you know, there really is. And I think it really kind of depends on your temperament as a lifter, because this is the thing, you know, in powerlifting, there are a lot of different types of lifters. There are lifters that draw from anger for their big lifts, you know, so they think about, you know, some dark shit. They sniff the ammonia, they get amped up, they lift. And then, you know, there are lifters that like when I first started powerlifting, because I saw a lot of that around me, I was like, maybe that's what I got to do to lift some heavy ass weight. Like, I need to try and do that. And I'm not typically an angry guy, by the way. Like, it's kind of hard to ruffle my feathers or make me mad. So I was having to create this artificial anger and amp up, you know, which didn't work well for me. So I just went back to my own like temperament. I am calm before a big lift. I try to think of nothing. And that for me works well towards jiu-jitsu. I don't think it works well to get really angry, typically, for most people. If you can have a calm type of anger, then yes, because there are some high-level black belts. I wish I knew his name so like people could look him up. But there's a very high-level black belt, Andre Marigali, or Nicholas Marigali. Before his matches, he like paces back and forth and he's like a bull. And when he gets in though, he's like super focused, right? So he has this focused, you could even call it anger and rage, but he's still extremely technical. He's not like using too much strength. But what I was saying was in jiu-jitsu, like as a powerlifter, you have to create a lot of force. But in jiu-jitsu, if you try to approach it as a powerlifter would, you're going to get wrecked because you kind of have to, in some ways, calm down and utilize technique, which is a hard thing for lifters to do because you know that, you know, this person, like we were talking about the example of somebody on top of you in a mount position, you know that if you, as a lifter, you could just bench this person off of you. You could just be like, ha, right, and make him fly. But that's not, like, if you're working against someone who weighs as much as you or is even heavier than you, most of the time that's not going to work. There are technical ways to get out of it. And that was one of my struggles at the beginning. You know, guys were saying, try not to use strength, try to use technique, try not to use strength. And in the back of my head, I was just like, how? It's here. Like, it's right here. How do I not use it? So like, I just had to like learn how to like, in certain situations, understand that, okay, I can push him off of me, or I could maybe just smash him here, but I know that that's not realistic. So I had to really dive into that. And one thing that's helping me out a lot is lifting before jiu-jitsu. Now, if you can manage this, I think it'd be great as a strength athlete because let me just talk about the opposite of this. If you were to do jiu-jitsu then lift, I think that's very dangerous because your body's already beat up and now you're going to try and get underneath a squat or underneath a bench press when your muscles are fatigued. It's much better in any situation, no matter what type of jiu-jitsu athlete you are, to lift beforehand because if you go on the mats and you're a little bit fatigued, okay, now you can't use as much general force as you typically would. You have to rely more so on technique. And that helped me out so much. If I did a heavy bench press workout or just a heavy workout in here, then I went to go roll, man, it really did change my game because first off, I was a little bit tired. But secondly, I couldn't just use all of the force that I typically would be used to using to escape things. So I now had to rely on that technique. When I was tired especially, right, in desperation, you start to go back to what you're good at, you know, when you're really beat up. But I couldn't go back to that because I was already so freaking beat. So it forced me to learn and use the technique that we've been going over rather than going back to my powerlifting background and just trying to push myself out of it or will myself out of it. So yeah, but there are really beneficial carryovers. Like, you know, if two black belts are rolling and one is a strength athlete that is, they're the same weight and one's just stronger than the other with the same level of jiu-jitsu technique, you could almost say 8, 9, 10 out of 10 times that individual who's stronger will win, you know? So I think that everybody that does jiu-jitsu needs to find a way to implement some strength training or some training to get a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger because there's the oh my gosh, just how much it's going to help the martial art is insane.
Yeah, I never would have thought of it that way. You're almost humbling yourself prior to going in there. You're like pre-exhausting yourself. That way, even if you defaulted back to that strength, it wouldn't be there. You know, your tank is empty almost, right? That's pretty clever. Yeah, I like that. Because I was thinking that might be something that I would even do, you know, getting in there just like, yeah, I can do the math on this guy, weight about this, I could bench this, I could throw him off right now. If he's got any sort of skill, it's just not going to work, and I'm just going to feel so defeated in trying that method. So I want to just quickly just switch gears here, because this is actually, you mentioned it on the podcast, Mark Bell's, earlier this week, and you were talking about kind of entrepreneurship. And did you, I don't know if I'm quoting this right, but you had someone that when you were growing up, I don't know if it's your mother or your auntie or something, but basically pitching to you that you could always go back to school and get a degree. Because this is something that I've talked with a few people about, and I talk with a lot of entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, and very successful people. And, you know, it's funny, even my mom pitches that to me. I went to college for 3 years, but she always pitched that you can go back to school. I'm like, for what? I went, first of all, and like in school, I had a company, and I actually sold that company when I finished college, but like I've always been doing business, but for some reason I still get pitched on, you can go get more schooling done. So I just want to get your take on this, this idea that pretty much anyone with a piece of, you know, with any of these like devices can become an entrepreneur, can really do it for themselves, can set goals, and again, getting back to law of attraction, can set these things up for themselves and then work towards it, and really just have the confidence to do so, even if people are chirping in their ear, you know, meanwhile, to go and do something that's, you know, maybe they don't want to do per se. I just want to get your take on that, your experience with it.
Yeah, man. So that exact story, that woman was my mom's best friend from college. And this was like, was it this year? It was actually earlier this year. So she came to visit my mom, and you know, just so everybody knows, I'm Nigerian. So within our culture, for any Nigerian immigrants that come to America, because I'm first generation here, a lot of Nigerians are pretty successful, but they're like doctor, lawyer, engineer. You know, that's the thing. And when you're coming up as a kid in a Nigerian household, you don't only hear that from your parents, but you hear that from your uncles. You hear that from your aunts. You hear that from your aunts that really aren't your aunts, but you call them your aunt because your mom knows them. You know what I mean? You hear that from literally everyone in the community. Oh, what do you want to go to school for, Nsima? Oh, I want to be a doctor. Oh, very successful. You know, like that's your culture, right? And then even socially, outside of Nigerian culture, like you know, you go to school, you have the blueprint. That's your blueprint. You really can't see anything outside of that because that's what everybody else is doing. I didn't have any businessmen or entrepreneurs around me, so it was something that I didn't really think was possible initially. But at this point, I've already gone deep into what I do right now in terms of coaching. So that makes me career level money. I don't need anything else. And this lady who she went to college with my mom. She got a degree. Her daughters all have degrees. And she was talking to me. She's like, Nsima, it doesn't matter what you're doing right now. It could all fall apart. If you just go to school and get that degree, right? If you get that degree, then at least you have something to fall back on. You know, just go back. And we were talking, and I was like, okay, Auntie, listen, like, I'm doing pretty good right now, right? I have people around me that are also in business that I'm learning from, and they're doing pretty well too. Why? I was like, and you know, you got to be respectful. That's one thing. I respect my elders. I came up, respect your elders, respect whatever. So I wasn't trying to be mean or anything, but I was just like, Auntie, tell me why. And she was just like, well, you know, if you don't have a degree, there's a lot of, you know, you could probably fail. Like you don't have anything, you know, if all falls apart, you don't have anything to fall back on. Just like, so why should I go back and spend a few thousand, if not tens of thousands of dollars to finish up and get that degree? What's it going to bring me? And she couldn't come up with an answer other than you just need to go back and do it. Like it came down to, okay, I'm your aunt. You need to get your ass back in school and go do it. So it's just something that like culturally, like within the Nigerian community and a lot of communities, it's something that like if you, especially Nigerians, if you don't get a degree, you're kind of a failure. It doesn't really matter unless you have a lot of big things to show for it. You know, there's a lot of posturing. So like the first question when you go to a lot of like, I guess even African parties, it's like, especially for myself, like I guess a lot of like fathers who want to, you know, figure out a guy for their daughters. Well, where'd you go to school and what's your degree? It doesn't matter what you do. It's just like, that's the culture. So what I was happy about is like when I first left school, I didn't tell my mom that I left school for like a year. Didn't tell her for a full year. She didn't know I wasn't in school. She thought I was still in school. And then when I told her what I was doing, what I was working towards, like, she was like, okay, well, if you're not going to get a degree, at least you're working towards something. You work hard, so I trust that you'll be able to make it happen. She was literally the only person in my life that was like, I trust that you can make this happen. And I've mentioned, I'm so lucky that I had that. Because if she was super against it, but she did want me to go back to school, by the way, but she was just like, do this. If it doesn't work out, just go back, try and get it. And she's been pretty supportive of that. So I do think it is very difficult, honestly. It's cool now because even when I started doing that type of stuff, I think entrepreneurship it was starting to get a little bit more popular, but it was still at a point where you didn't necessarily see much of that unless you willingly tried to look for it. You really had to look for what people were doing in terms of entrepreneurship. For you, though, that's dope that you sold a company in like college. That means you probably must have been thinking about that shit since like high school, or I don't know how.
Yeah.
But
I was 14 when I registered my first corporation, and it was in digital marketing. So that was like 2003, maybe something like that.
Yeah. Dude, you were way ahead of the game. I wasn't that smart. Like, I was not that smart. I got inspiration from guys like Alberto Nunez and people that were just doing things online like that. I was like, okay, this is possible. I can do this. But I wasn't super business minded like yourself. You know what I mean? I didn't think that it would have been something that I've been able to do. Now I think, though, like, because of social media, because like the Gary V's and how spread that is, there are kids coming up, like kids that are coming up that are like, I'm gonna make a YouTube channel, I'm gonna make a gaming channel, I'm gonna fucking stream, I'm gonna make hella money. Like that's just popular right now, which is great, honestly, because like, that you probably know so many other things that you could do outside of the box like outside of just going to school. You know that for sure. There's so many different business ideas that people could have that they just don't think about.
You know what, Mark was actually just talking about that. You can sell anything, like anything whatsoever. I've had businesses where I've sold women's hair extensions. I've sold women's lingerie. I've sold dog toys, like anything, right? Like anything can make money because there's stuff everywhere and someone wants something regardless, right? So yeah, definitely. And having these Gary V's and all these people on social media now, it's amazing. I didn't have that growing up. I was kind of just like doing it on my own. And I only really got heavily involved into it because I realized how much it sucked working for someone. Like I worked at a grocery store for like 3 months making below minimum wage. They're like, hey, can you go stack this on top of that shelf up there? I'm like, dude, I'm making $8 an hour. I'm not climbing up that fucking shelf. So I ended up just quitting that job. And I was like, I'm going to go work my own shit. And that's kind of how I got my confidence to do it, was just dealing with garbage, like jobs. But it was very similar, like not many people supporting like, oh, I think you can do this. I think you can start a company. I think you can be successful. It wasn't really like that. And very similarly to your mother, my mom was kind of the same. She's like, okay, well, you are in college, you're taking business. You could probably just do your business. Are you sure you don't want to try that? And it's a little bit of support, but it's like, it's not like solid, like I totally believe in you and you can do this, you're going to be a multimillionaire. It's not like that. It's like, yeah, you could try this, but there's always that school thing, right? You could always go for, so I totally get where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
Now with all this online gaming stuff too, it's pretty crazy. And the fact that now that can totally be a profession, it just blows me away. So
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, real quick. I don't want you to lose your point. So, but especially like within this Nigerian community and a lot of different cultures, like one of my uncles, his son, who's younger than me, is actually doing entrepreneurial things right now. Like he has a clothing line. He's actually trying to rock that for a while. He had a lot of inspiration from like a lot of other entrepreneurs, and even myself when I was doing what I was doing, it's like, yeah, look at Nsima, look at what he's doing. So, this is the thing, and I don't necessarily blame immigrant parents for this. I think that their head's in the right place. All they want for their children is to be successful. If you think about it, like my mom came from Nigeria, which is not like, it's a very corrupt place, especially, as a woman too. And you come here to the land of opportunity, you get a degree, you get a job, you start doing well, and you look at your kid, and your kid has all this opportunity and they're not going to school. So, that's difficult, I feel like, to come to terms with. that there's so many other things to do. But, you know, his son was saying, oh, I want to do this. I want to do this. Look at these people. Look at these entrepreneurs. He's like, you know what? That may have worked for Nsima or that may have worked for them, but that's not going to work for you. And I think it's just so, like, parents don't understand the power that they can have over the goal of their children. And yeah, obviously, as an individual, we need to sometimes not put as much weight under what our parents think for a while, you know, even though they do want the best for us most of the time. We got to not put as much weight into that. But if you're a parent listening to this and you have a kid that's maybe thinking a little bit different, try and support that kid no matter how hard you may think that is. You know, don't kill it. Please don't kill it.
Yeah, that's a great point. There was a book I listened to, The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, and it covered that, like, exactly that, especially in the early stages of a child's development, the words that the parent says to them, like, they're so critical, and that there's so much value to be placed on that. You know, I've walked around, and I'm sure you have too, and you hear, like, parents yelling at their kids or saying some weird shit to their kids, and I think, like, the parent doesn't realize it in this moment where it's in some stupid grocery store, but that kid could carry what you just said for 10 years. Yeah. You know, it could really affect their development. So I don't think a lot of parents really put as much, I don't think they think that their words are that impactful on the children, but they really, really are. So I'm glad you addressed that because it's something that's super important. So I wanted to ask you, because we did briefly just mention some gaming stuff, and I know you just picked up a Switch.
How the fuck did you know that?
Yeah, I'm good. So first of all, I want to ask you how much you actually playing, how much are you doing any gaming with all the lifting and the Jiu Jitsu and the podcast and everything? Do you have any time for actual gaming?
So how long ago did I get it? I got the Switch.
It's pretty recent, right? And I know you're trying to get Mark on some gaming shit too. So
trying to get him to buy something.
He said he likes Mario Kart or something.
Yeah, he likes those games, man. I think his son has some stuff too. But he likes gaming. He just like, dude, like, I don't even know how he'd find time, but he can. Anyway, I think
it's okay in moderation, but I just want to, I know a lot of busy people and they squeeze in gaming here or there. So I just want to see how you manage it.
Yeah, it was tough. I got my Switch last weekend, I think, maybe Saturday or Sunday or something. So I bought Breath of the Wild. I bought Smash Bros. And I think I'm only kind of been able to log in about 2.5 hours.
Okay.
So, like, I've talked about this on the podcast before. When I was a teenager, bro, my personality, when I start something, I want to get really, really good. I want to be competitive, you know? So when I started like Counter-Strike as a teenager, I wanted to be a competitive Counter-Strike player. Like I played that much to get that good as a teenager.
Yeah.
So
Do you remember the version? Do you remember the version of Counter-Strike you started on? 1 point. Do you know? It was
Source.
Source. Okay.
Counter-Strike Source. 1.6 was before that, and I didn't play it early enough for that. But I played Counter-Strike Source.
A little tidbit. That's actually how I started with digital marketing. Was doing large clan websites and marketing for them. So like those big fucking teams that now they're like on massive stages. We used to like build their websites, do their marketing. We sponsored a bunch of shit. I sponsored gaming radios. That's how I started into actual digital marketing, was through gaming and Counter-Strike. So it's just funny you mentioned that.
Dude, that's sick. Yeah, and you were a teenager, right?
Sorry?
You were a teenager.
Yeah. I had a clan, a Counter-Strike clan of 120 people. Mm-hmm. And we had like 10 servers. Yeah. And I just sponsored large, big clans. And we just did websites and apps. And not apps back then. Shit, what was it? Mostly just websites, graphics, advertising, stuff like that. Yeah, apps didn't come out yet.
Now I'm so curious, like, how you got into all that stuff. Like what was around you as a kid, or was it just your belief, or was it just the things that you were interested in that allowed you to think outside of the box at such an early age? Because that's just fucking crazy to me.
I don't know. I really don't know. I guess I always liked making money. Like from a very young age, I knew that the world kind of runs on money. So I would just buy and sell things constantly. Even like way back, like grade 5, 6, 4, whatever, I was selling like candies to kids in school. So I go buy them in huge bulk in like a massive jar, split them up into little bags, and flip them at school for $2 on these little bags. So I make like a 4 times return on my candy investment. So like I just started doing that shit, and then eventually I got into gaming, and then I was like, I can probably make money in gaming. It's kind of like what we're talking about. You can make money doing absolutely anything as long as you shift your focus into that direction. It's very easy for you to be like, no, I can't make shit doing that. But if you make that little flip and go, or can I, you'll figure it out, right? And you'll be able to keep it all together. So that's kind of how it went for me. I mean, I didn't grow up having anything. Like I was pretty broke ass in like a ghetto area, raised just by my mom, like super ghetto. So, it's, and kind of like a gang area, like a lot of racism there too, between different cultures. So yeah, I just, I didn't really like my situation. I just knew I had to work hard to change it. So, but I kind of was patient with it. I was like, stuff doesn't happen overnight. But that was basically the process.
Yeah. Wow. Like, yeah. And so like for you, you've been doing that since you were a kid. For me, the business stuff didn't come natural to me. Like like I had to have examples of people that did it. And then my mind was like, I can do that. I wasn't just so like, and then when I started thinking that way, then I started getting into the self-development stuff. And then I was like, oh shit. Okay. So there are all these cool things I could do. I feel like I hopped on that train kind of late, I'm happy that I did when I did. Like I'm saying I got into it late. I was like maybe 21, 22. But at the same time, it's just like, I'm just happy that I managed to make that switch or make that mindset switch, because I was very much an academic. I was very much an academic focused kid. So like anyone can do it. But on the gaming thing, I can't play as much as I want to. Even Andrew here, who has a Switch too, he's the one who peer pressured me into buying it. Anyway, it's an inside joke here. But even he can't play his Switch. And I don't think he's touched it maybe once this week for like an hour. That was like the most that he's done in a while. But like, we got a few other guys here that have one too. And just we gotta balance it out. I can't get too into it. If I allow myself to like it too much, man, you won't see shit from me for months.
It's all right as long as you start live streaming that and monetizing that. Then do what you want.
Yeah. Give me some time to get good at Smash Bros, and then I'll start streaming. Just give me
cool. Yeah. I've been considering trying the only game I play right now is Dota, Defense of the Ancients.
Oh my god. Okay, I go on that in a second, but I used to play League when I was younger.
Okay.
I had to quit because I got too addicted. I got way too addicted. I had the username Mamba, and this wasn't with like M@MMBA. Like I had the username Mamba. It was like I got in early, but I was so fucking addicted that I was like, if I continue this, I didn't have. That's the thing. You have control, bro. I feel like you're probably really good at Dota, and you have some self-control in how long you play. When I played, especially since I was playing with a bunch of other people, bro, I did not have the control to be like, an hour, let's get off. It'd be like 5 hours later. Oh God, I got to do my homework. Like, it was not good.
Yeah, with Dota, it's kind of cool. Any of those games, it's like you got that 1 hour match or 45-minute match, and usually I'll squeeze one or two in a few times a week, and then that's basically it. Yeah, but definitely I could see. You know what? I have a standing desk now that really helps, because I'll just get tired of standing after a while. I'm like, okay, my legs are a little sore. I'm gonna go sit down, take a break. If I was still sitting, I could probably pull off a good 5-hour session.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I did want to ask you about since we haven't really covered much of it, but you had any meditation routine, or it could be as simple as just going for a mindful walk, something like that, or it could be, actually going and sitting down cross-legged and doing the whole thing. So do you have anything that you employ on a day-to-day basis or weekly or anything?
So I don't, in terms of like what most people would think of in terms of meditation, sitting down 10 or 20 minutes and just letting your mind wander, that. I don't do that every day. I do that a few times, twice, maybe 3 times a week. I used to do that every single day, actually, when I was really trying to and I'm still trying to learn more about it now, deeper meditations or whatever. I have, Sam Harris.
Yeah.
Okay, so I downloaded his app because he's really good at what he does. I was like, oh, this could help, and it did. A lot of his meditations are pretty solid. It'll give you a good primer on a lot of that stuff. And I still have it. I still utilize it quite a bit too. But the thing that really kind of, I guess, helps me out is making sure that every day I get outside. I work a lot. I try to do all my work outside. I take multiple walks a day. And I just try not to have my phone on me. I just try to let myself think. I bring a notepad with me, so if any ideas come up while I'm walking, I can write them down. And that's, I think the walking thing for me has been one of the best changes that I've made, because I get so many cool ideas when I'm just like walking for 20 minutes. And then like, obviously, like I mentioned, that sun exposure, I think that in and of itself has been something that, as I've focused on it, I've been making sure that I just do more things outside. My mood generally has been elevated. I just feel so much better, so much clearer. There's a period of time a while back where like I'd just be doing all my work indoors, inside of Starbucks, inside of just like, I wouldn't get much sun. And there is a noticeable difference nowadays. So one big thing I think for everybody is just, especially, it's tough, especially if you work in like an office, you have kids, right? So typically people wake up, they get in their car, they drop their kids at school, they go to work, they're there for hours, they pick up their kids, they go back indoors. Think about like the percentage of time is spent in a car, in a building, not getting sun. It's not normal at all. Like you need to get sun exposure. And it's not something that, oh, it's just for vitamin D. It's literally like, it's literally for your circadian rhythm, your sleeping and waking cycles, to trigger your body. It's daytime, it's like hormonal things. Like it's beneficial. And then to trigger yourself to go to sleep. And most people's circadian rhythms are off, which is why they themselves feel off. And when I've got that in line, like nowadays, without an alarm, I'm waking up literally at the same time every single day, 6:55, almost on the dot every single day. It's never been like that for me. Typically, because like I would go to sleep or go to sleep at different times, and I wouldn't get as much sun. I'd sometimes wake up at 5:50, and I'd have to fall back asleep because I didn't get enough sleep. Or I'd sometimes wake up more so late, or I'd have to use my alarm to get up when I needed to wake up. Now it's literally 6:55, 6:50, 6:55 every single day. My shit is in line. And now that I have that in check, man, everything feels just so much better. So in terms of, I guess, a habit, I know it's not meditation. I think walking in and of itself is just a beneficial thing to do. You can clear your mind. You don't need to take your phone with you. I don't have my phone with me. I don't have like music on. I just let myself walk and think. I look at that as meditation, to be honest, and as a period for me to be a bit mindful. But I think just trying to get outside more as individuals will be one of the best things that you can do for yourself. Getting outside in the morning, getting a little bit of sun in the morning if you possibly can, just to set yourself in line for the day. And if you can, do as much work or activities as you can out in the sun as possible. Even if you're in a cloudy area like Chicago or New York or whatever, you don't get as much sun some places where you might be. That it's still like, even if it's overcast, you're still getting a lot of sun, even if you don't visibly see the sun like a lot of us do here in California. It's still a lot, and it will make a difference. That's one of the biggest things that I've changed for myself, and even for a lot of clients that I work with, to get in that habit, and they themselves notice a difference in their mood, their sleep quality, their waking, how like when they wake up, all of these things. I think that could be one of the things that is, because there's like, we talked a little bit about breathing, how like as lifters, we don't pay much attention to maybe just that aspect, just breathing correctly. In terms of, fitness, individuals, people who are into fitness, we pay attention to our nutrition and our training, but who the hell really thinks about sunlight or getting enough light in during the day? It's just crazy how much of a benefit that has. I never thought about that until like earlier this year, right? And I mean, I got more sunlight than most because I would sometimes work outside, but when I really made it a point to get out in the morning, in the beginning of my day, to be outside more, to take more walks outside, gosh, that made a big difference for me. Such a big difference for me.
Mm-hmm. And you say, I mean, some people might not consider that a meditation, but I really do. I consider it like a form of mindfulness meditation. It's actually part of even, I'm not sure if you've heard of this, but there's 4 postures of Buddhism, which is sitting, standing, lying down, walking around, which is you just carry this mindfulness, this awareness with you as you go about the world. I've spoken with a Buddhist Lama. He's actually a mentor of mine, Lama Suryadas. He came up with another posture, which is thumbing. Get these things going at you. You're just thumbing and being very mindful because we've got all these devices. So it's like something you can just carry with you as you go around the world. I was just speaking with another author, and he was mentioning that he was practicing 35 hours a week of mindfulness meditation, but he was including even eating time. because a lot of time we'll be eating, but the food itself triggers our emotions, triggers our thoughts. A lot of times people don't eat mindfully, just enjoy the flavor profile of what they're taking in, and being really attentive to that. So a lot of times everyone's attention is wandering when they're eating. It's just very triggering. So I think that just carrying that mindfulness is a great practice. It seems like that's kind of the direction you're in, really. And then setting the tone and setting the flow of the day by getting up at a correct time for you, whatever's optimal for you, and then just having your day planned out, according to that. So it seems, is that correct? Is that sort of described, really?
Pretty much. And like in that realm, like I'm just trying to learn so much more, because even the four postures, right? I didn't know what that was until you just told me. So like, I'm actually curious, like, we'll talk after, but I want to know like what books you would say, or what like resources, I guess, would be really good for someone to learn about a lot of this stuff. Cause like that, like a lot of it's interesting, but I'm such a noob in this area.
Yeah. So books that I would recommend, it really depends on what you enjoy. I like Zen, I like Buddhism, I like Hinduism.
I've been trying to learn more about Buddhism. That's been something that piqued my interest recently.
So books like really Tao Te Ching. I'll send you a message with these after, but Tao Te Ching is really good, or the Tao. There's a translation by Stephen Mitchell that's really good, and it helps bring you into this resonant state when you're just walking around. I would even suggest listening to these. Another really powerful book is the Diamond Sutra, which is like extremely old, and it's very much like that as well, Zen Buddhism. And if you want to go more into Hinduism, the Shiva Sutras is actually really good as well.
Shiva
Okay. Sutras, yeah. Those are really good starting points anyways. There are ones that you're going to have to listen. I mean, I listen to them, like, so for instance, the Diamond Sutra, I'll play that for a month straight every single day. If I want to really like delve down deep into something, it's almost like I just want to peel away the layers of ego, peel away everything that I've come to know and understand since birth, because this all seems so transient, so temporary, but we hold such attachment to it, right? Like, it's like we all take the stage of this play, we put on our masks, our costume, but after the play is done, we take that shit off, Like, a lot of people think that's it, that's them, and that's all they'll ever be. But it's really just the mask and the costume and the outfit. So if you wore that after the play with everyone, they're going to think you're crazy. They're going to be like, why is this dude still wearing his mask? So I guess really the practice of Buddhism or meditation or spirituality as a whole has been for me to peel away those layers that, are so superficial and just get deeper into. And what I'm coming to understand, it all has to do a lot with the heart. It's like getting out of the brain, getting out of the logic, and moving more into the heart. I'm studying right now, I'm studying a lot of ancient Egyptian, and that they're so heavily involved in, like, just their view of the heart, even the embalming process, the mummification process. They strip out the brain through the nose, discard it into the trash. It's completely useless to them. Going into the next world, the heart is what's to be preserved. They'll keep that separately in a nice little, like a nice jar container. So it's like they put so much value there, and everything is to be seen through the heart. So if you try to operate mechanically through the brain, you're just a mechanical human being, which it's really contrary to being a human, to being like a conscious entity that's like freely, creatively expressing yourself throughout the world. It's like when you start to shift to being mechanical, which is what the sun can help take you out of that. Like, a lot of people that have those office jobs, I know guys like that, they don't see the sun during the winter for months. Like, and they'll commute going underground into their office and then leave and come out, and they never see the sun, and they get so detached from that truth that's deep inherent within them, like so I find that, like, having this podcast is one of the reasons why I like to hold these conversations with people, just because I like to shed some light on that inner light that's within every person, that it seems like everyone forgets because there's so much external stimuli, there's so much information, so much happening, that people get overwhelmed and they buy into all that hype, when it's like, that is just, it's so fleeting, it's gone. So a practice that I even like doing is meditating on death and dying. So it's painful. You'll experience suffering. I've cried during the process because I'm stripping away everything I've come to understand and leaving myself with nothing. Another really good book is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. because it allows someone to understand the process of dying and going through the different bardos, the stages after death, where you may have this cling, this attachment to the form which you've come to know and love and understand as being you. But really, it's not necessarily the core essence of that being. It's just that costume, you know? So some books. I'll give you a bunch. I have so many. Like, that's part of, I love to listen to books and all this different stuff. Even when lifting, I don't listen to music anymore. It's just audiobooks, just podcasts. Even though I do think there is some performance benefit to music, like you can get like 5 to 10% boost in performance if you're just getting hyped like that. But so maybe I'll throw on Kanye here or there. But for the most part, it's all just like books and whatnot.
Yeah, no, like I was writing down these books frantically, but I'm happy that you're going to send me them after.
I'll give you a whole bunch. Yeah. I even post them on my Instagram page for the podcast. A lot of people like them. And I'll even ask like other people to leave their recommendations, because people start commenting and I'm like, oh shit, I haven't read that. And I'll like go and check it out. And it's just amazing. I like the idea of working the mind in that sense, just as much as you're working your physical body, because it's like, I've spoken with some spiritual teachers like Ram Dass. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. And Ram Dass is, I think he's like 88 or 89 years old right now. He's literally just about to kick the bucket. Like, he's probably going to die in the next couple of years, but he's preparing for death. And just in talking to people like that, it really, and elder people in general, when you say you respect your elders, great reason for doing it is because they have so much insight and intuition that you can just take away from, rather than listening to a younger person who's just so caught up in worldly hype and stuff like that. So, but I wanted to ask you as well, have you had any psychedelic experiences?
Nah, dude, barely. And like, so the biggest thing that I've done was like weed a few times. Like that's pretty much it. But one of the reasons why I was so, I guess, afraid of even trying that when I was younger, and the first time I did it was like, I think I was like 24. I was actually 24. And the reason was actually because of like my older sister. So preface this, I don't think that this is something that would happen to most people. But my sister, she was super smart. She was really, really intelligent. She was actually on a really great path in terms of, she was going towards law. She was one of the top in her class. She was really, really awesome. But I remember when I was a teenager, when like she first started, because we were really close. She just first started smoking some weed. It wasn't a big deal. Like, she told me about it. She didn't want me to do anything like that, but she told me about it. Literally a few months later, I noticed a lot of changes happening in her temperament, or the way she was acting, her mood. And then she had her first episode of like, it was a schizophrenic outburst. And now she's literally not the same human being as she was in the past. And what the doctor said, or two doctors said this, was that there are certain individuals that have a propensity, like a gene or something in them, that if they take a psychedelic or something that enhances that part, it'll come out. If they have that, which I guess most people don't, because, kids smoke weed from like 15, 16, no big deal. I'm not saying that weed will cause schizophrenia or psychedelics will, but in her case, because she had that, it did. And she's not the same person. She's not the same person she was in the past. That was one of the reasons why I was so deathly afraid of trying that stuff for the longest time. I told myself, okay, I'm going to let my brain develop a bit more before that. And even the first time, my first experience with weed, because I was so scared of it. It wasn't a great experience, because my mind was already racing before I took that first hit. And the whole experience, my mind was like, oh my God, am I going to die? Am I go crazy? Blah, blah, blah. I didn't. I did it a few times after that. And it was all cool. It was actually fun. I'd do it again. It's been a long time. But that was something that I personally was just like deathly afraid of, because what I saw happen to her, it was the craziest thing to me. Now, with being like, we had Kyle Kingsbury on, and he's talked a lot about ayahuasca, And that really piqued my interest. Even Andrew over here is like, we need to try some ayahuasca.
Yeah. Kyle's into shrooms as well, right?
Yeah, he's into shrooms as well, microdosing shrooms, and I've never tried that either. And yeah, like I'm interested. I just have never really delved down that road just because of like obviously situations that have happened in my life. I've just been scared. I've been really scared. So yeah, very vanilla in that world.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense if someone has like a predisposition to any sort of mental illness or anything like that. It could be triggering if they try something. It's almost like you'd have to go to a doctor maybe to get some sort of scan to figure it out in advance. I don't think they.
Yeah, they can't. But like I'll say this too. Like I think that if you can't really get it tested, but the same situation happened to another individual in my family. So like to her happened to another individual. Same shit happened. So like there's a genetic thing in it too, probably, which is why I was scared, because I'm like, two? Shit, this shit must be genetic. Like what the hell? That's why I was just deathly afraid. And at this point, since I'm 27, my brain is pretty much fully developed and nothing's happened. I'm good. Pretty sure I'm good. Fingers crossed. Like, but it's still something that I guess, kind of scares me a little bit. But like, one thing that you were mentioning, getting out of the head and more so getting to the heart, that was one thing, a shift that I've been trying to make for a long time, because like I'm too much up here most of the time. Even nowadays, I'm really, really up here. I try to just like logicize things so much, which is why Charlie, the guy who we had on, we talked to, I loved having that conversation with him, because he's a guy that's all here. He's all heart. And you can tell the way he puts his ideas forward, the way he thinks, his creativity, he's all right here. And I think that's like such a powerful thing. And that's such a shift that like, if an individual that's like me, that's all head, can like access some of that, like I'm trying to access more of that, or utilize more of that. My girlfriend's like almost the exact opposite. Like she's all here, and like she's logical, but like she's more, that's why I said when I showed her your podcast page, she's like, I fucking dig this. Like she knows all about this, because that's she digs that. So if you can make that switch, obviously by listening to more of this podcast for resources and ideas on that stuff, it'd be powerful.
Yeah, I think if even world leaders could make that shift more, it would be such a beautiful place to live. And that's why I even asked about the psychedelics. I find that is a tool that helps bring people, like you can meditate. So I've tried a bunch of different psychedelics. I've tried, actually I haven't done ayahuasca, mostly because I don't want the commitment of puking for hours.
Oh God.
I know people that have done the ayahuasca thing, and most of them have thrown up like at least 2 to 3 times after trying it. And I'm not a huge fan of that. Also, the high from the ayahuasca tends, like the DMT, the dimethyltryptamine, tends to stay with you a really long time, like hours and hours. So I'm not a huge fan of that. It's kind of like psilocybin mushrooms. Like if I have those, I can be high for, if it's a microdose, it's not really much of anything. It's just a slight enhanced perception as I move about the world on my day. So I can be on a business call, but I'll experience what's being said to me differently than if I wasn't on a microdose. So I guess it's kind of like how those Silicon Valley people are all cheating in an interesting way with these psychedelics. They're just perceiving things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But the ayahuasca, it's like a bit of a commitment. If you do get a chance to try some sort of psychedelic, I would lean more towards, or I would suggest lean towards psilocybin mushrooms, or doing the DMT, not the ayahuasca, just DMT, where you can smoke it and blast off for like 15 minutes, which is a little bit heavy, because when you come back to that 15-minute blast off thing, it's overwhelming what you would experience. So if you're to do that, you can do it in a way where you're not totally blasting off. You're just taking a few hits and sitting back and then watching the fractals in the sky. And you can be good with that. Maybe smoke a joint, take it to the next level. But I'd say start there if you get your hands on something like that. I'm in Canada, so we're pretty like open about all this shit. Like I have DMT, I have psilocybin mushrooms, I smoke weed, it's totally legal here. But I don't do it all the time, but I think it's a really good tool for someone to integrate just so that they can start moving and shifting more into their heart center, getting out of their head. You'll start to feel this connectedness with everything when you start to experiment with some of these substances. So if anyone's listening and hasn't tried the stuff, can do it under a safe, in a nice environment, I recommend doing that. Don't go to a fucking rave. Do it at home in your own comfortable setting that you're familiar with, so you're not going to freak out. No dragons popping out of the sky and flying down on you and shit like that, you know, so keep it safe. But yeah, just a suggestion for if you're considering trying something.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm really happy I spoke to you because I'm happy I got your advice on this, because psilocybin, I've heard about psilocybin from a lot of other different podcasts.
Yeah.
I've never looked it up, but I've just heard a lot of people talk about it. So that I think that for me, that'll be my little dip, my little toe dip. I'm gonna try that instead.
Yeah, try like 2 to 3 grams of psilocybin mushrooms. Not anything more than that. Like you're going into 4 or 5 grams, then you're pretty much committing to a good 6-8 hour high. You know, but if you just do a few, like 2-3 grams again, you're gonna get a taste or get your feet wet, basically, like what you're saying. And yeah, avoid the ayahuasca for now. That's such a big craze. A lot of people are doing it, and yeah, actually, a buddy of mine just quit his job. He worked for Bloomberg, the financial company. Just the same type of thing, like going into an office, not getting much sun exposure, all sorts of different stuff. Got depressed, quit his job, left Toronto, moved down to Mexico like a week ago, and he's going to start running ayahuasca type of retreats in Mexico. So I think a lot of people are pretty upset with the way their lives are and you know, the circumstances that they're in. So they're just looking for these outs. And I think they should either increase their meditation, not their medication, their meditation, and then from there experiment with some psychedelics. Because again, the meditation practice, like I can meditate for a week straight, and I may experience on one of those occasions like the similar type of feeling I would get from psilocybin mushrooms, like that heart opening experience. So I tend to do a meditation in the mornings. I'll go down into my shower. I do it on I have a big stone shower. So I do it head down, and I'll do affirmations, mantras. I'll try the experiencing death, all sorts of different stuff. I'll even try 1 hour. I'll try and encounter my high. I don't like higher self, my higher self, just so I can come to know and understand that energy. And when I've done that, I've found that like all my flesh and bones gets torn away, like a Thanos style, just evaporates, and all that's left is that heart. So, you know, I can get to that state through meditating. It just takes, like, sometimes I won't even get there for a week. But if you try some mushrooms, you'll get there, like, first session. So, yeah, you're basically just skipping the line. That's it.
I got you.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, before we wrap things up, because you are obviously into health and fitness, what is your absolute favorite exercise?
Favorite exercise? It's tie between 3. I'll make it a tie between.
Yeah, if you want to give 3 bonus, go for it.
Okay, so I love pull-ups, but that's not my first favorite. I do love pull-ups though. It's a tie between the sumo deadlift and the pendlay row. Those are like my 2 favorite absolute exercises right there. I really like the sumo deadlift just because of the hip engagement, all of the muscles that are utilized. And it's actually a very athletic movement for athletes that like the sumo stance and utilizing the hips, because you can't just pull the bar with your back. You have to use your hips. And if you don't use your hips on a heavy sumo, you're going to fail the lift. So it's a very good athletic movement, the sumo deadlift. And then the pendlay row, just because I just really have loved that movement for years. It's awesome. So those 2. And then pull-ups. I love body weight pull-ups or weighted pull-ups. I want to be able to just do pull-ups until I'm a 95-year-old man doing pull-ups on a door handle, or you know, the top of door thing. I really like that movement. So those are the 3. I like squats and that stuff too, but it wouldn't be my absolute favorite.
Very cool. Yeah, those are some solid movements. Yeah, I'd say sumo deadlift's up there for me as well. The pull-ups, I think, is a really healthy movement to do. Yeah. Push-ups and pull-ups. I think they're underrated. And just the variation you can do on the slow eccentric and concentric portions of the movement, it can really do a lot of good just with those basic body weight type of movements. So yeah, very cool. All right, well, pretty much don't have any other questions for you right now, but did you have any closing thoughts for anyone that's listening? Anything you wanted to plug or anything you wanted to say before we hop off?
Real quick, yeah, whoever's listening to this podcast, please start getting outside. That's really important. I'm not going to go deep into that right now, but just like Adam was saying, if you're working in an office and you're stuck in there, do your best to get some sunlight in the morning, get some sunlight during the day. You'll feel a lot better after a few days. And then, I mean, real quick, you were mentioning the thing about masks. That was really interesting to me because with every podcast I get on, people are like, ooh, who are you or what do you do? And I name these things that I do or whatever. But every time I say that, I'm like, wait, that's like,
yeah, it's what you do. It's not who you are, right?
It's not who I am, you know, like, so I honestly still don't even know how to answer that question. Like, I really don't, because if you were to ask me that, that's what I'd say, but that's not who I am. That's a total side thing. That's something that I'm just thinking about on the side.
You know what? You are love, unconditional love. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And you're an expression of that. And that's it. That's why it all comes from the heart. And that's like the deepest truth. So anyone that starts to steer away from that is only a delusion and confusion. So they always have to return back to that. And everything has to be filtered through that.
No, I agree with you. Maybe I should start saying that instead. But I feel like I have a lot to learn in that realm. But
so I wanted to mention something about the sunlight thing. You're going to find this hilarious. But I was reading some studies that if you get sunlight exposure, UV exposure on your balls, that it can actually help with testosterone production. I did try this. I did try it. I tanned buck ass naked, balls out, getting them sun rays right on it, sun exposure. I don't know if it works, but have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, man. Like we have one of those Jew red light therapy things.
Yes.
And we have like the I'll just straight up, you know, get naked in front of it. I've been utilizing that. I've been using that for about 5 weeks now. And
so what you're saying is that's why you lift so heavy, because you got UV on your balls directly.
I mean,
steroids. Yeah.
It's much safer than, you know, going outside and if your backyard is closed off, okay, get naked in the sun. But mine isn't, so I can't just be out there, balls hanging, getting some sunlight. I could get the cops called on me. But like at this point, that red light therapy thing, I'm gonna get another test done to see if it has had any benefits so far. But I have been feeling, I don't know if it's placebo, but I've been feeling pretty damn good since using it. Andrew here uses it too, and we're just like, fuck, is this shit real? There's been a lot of research. It feels like it's working well. So I don't know, but it's pretty damn great. But yeah, I think you should try and get your hands on one. You've been reading the studies, so you can see it's hard to kind of refute. Like
I'll try anything outside of like sticking a needle in my ass, you know?
Yes. So yeah. I hope you give it a shot. I want to get your thoughts on it after you do the red light therapy stuff for a bit. But yeah, if you're interested in like the stuff I do, Adam's probably gonna put it in the description or whatever. But Instagram and YouTube is at Nsima Inyang. I won't bother spelling that out, but Nsima Inyang. My website's breakthebar.com for coaching, and you can find me here as one of the co-hosts on the Mark Bell Power Project, and also the very inconsistent podcast I do outside of this called We Don't Know Yet, WDKYET.com.
Very cool. Thank you again for taking the time, and I will shoot you a message with all the links, everything once it's up. If anyone's listening, I hope you enjoyed this, and hit up Nsima with a DM or a message. Start to just flood his messages with random questions if you got them. And thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Nsima, thanks again, and I'll see you again, I'm sure, soon, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you, Adam.